Hi, this is Julian with BehindTheAudio.com. Welcome to another podcast. Today I'm interviewing Yannick Süß and Robin Birner, two guys who work together under the name of Audinity, and they have recently scored the soundtrack for The Guild 3, and in general they have quite the portfolio when it comes to games that are set in historical eras. So without further ado, here's Yannick and Robin, aka Audinity. Hi Robin, hi Yannick, welcome. You guys call yourselves Audinity. You have a studio that specializes in services based on music, mainly composing music, especially for video games, and sometimes making sound design as well. And the latest big release you guys were involved in was The Guild 3. But you also scored some other big projects in the past. So just let me start with your history. When did you guys get together? What were some of the bigger milestones you worked on together? And also, why did you team up in the first place?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We got together in 2010, actually. That's like 8 years ago. And that was for the project The Guild 2 Renaissance. That was an add-on for The Guild 2. So the previous title for the Guild series by Joe Wood Entertainment. And well, I was the composer at that time, and I needed some help time-wise, production-wise, and Robin, who I knew from another project we were working on at that time, I hired him for this project for the Guild 2 Renaissance, and he helped me out, and we worked very well together, and everything turned out great. So we decided that was great. Let's do this again. And so we got back together on other projects and founded Audinity in 2012 to work professionally on other games and other projects, productions.
And looking at your portfolio, it appears that you have found a niche in games that are set in some historical era. Is that something that just happened, or did you try to get into that, or how did that come about?
Well, it happened quite naturally, I would say, because The Guild 2 Renaissance, okay, it's a historical game based during medieval times, but I think it's safe to say that both Yannick and I, during our childhood, we really enjoyed playing historical games, mainly strategy games, because most historical games are also strategy games or city builders.
That's true, yeah.
Some sort. So it was like a natural development for us. But at the same time, I don't think that we are like only focused on the historical aspects of game. I mean, we also did some stuff which is completely different, like Feed and Grow Fish, another little small indie game, which is quite popular when you search on it on YouTube and Google. And this music has nothing to do with historical stuff at all. But yeah, mainly I would say like the games we are most interested in writing music for, they are historical based of some sort.
And I think that's what our clients and the game studios trust us to do. Like we have lots of experience in the historical field, and I think they think, well, the guys of Audinity, they know how to do this, and well, at least I hope they think so. But well, that's what we do most of the time. But like Robin said, we have also other credits, absolutely not set in historical settings, but that's our specialization and our niche.
And I also noticed some tendency to Northern Europe in your portfolio. Like you do stuff for Paradox, for THQ Nordic. So you did the Cossacks DLC for, I'm not sure how to pronounce that in English, Europa Universalis.
Yes.
Then you did some other the Guild game now was also published by THQ. How did you get this connection to Sweden or Scandinavia?
Well, that's a story for Yannick, I think.
Well, yes. Well, back at the time of the Guild 2 Renaissance, which was our first project we did together, the Guild was still in the hands of Joe Wood, which was based in Vienna, in Austria.
Yep.
And shortly after the Guild 2 Renaissance, they were acquired by THQ Nordic or Nordic Games at that time, and they then renamed themselves to THQ Nordic. And so now the Guild series is in Swedish hands, and we are a partner for the Swedish company. And well, how we got to Paradox, that's a funny story, because I was working at a company which was doing film music concerts. They are producing film music concerts. I was working there in 2013, I think. And I was looking for video game scores, sheet music, which could be performed in concerts.
Oh.
Right? I was just on research, like which scores could be performed in live in concert. And I had contacted Andreas Waldetoft, who is the in-house composer at Paradox. And I talked to him a little and said, well, there is no sheet music to be performed, but if someone would be willing to arrange and transcribe some pieces for concert performances, I'd be happy to.
I see where this is going.
I'd be happy to see this. Yeah, and I said, well, sure, I do it. Yeah, and I started working on an arrangement, but I never finished it because as there was no real actual concert performance ahead of us, where it could be performed, there was not that much motivation, and I had other more important things to do, so to say. And this sheet music arrangement never got finished. But I don't know why or how. A year later, Andreas came back to me and said, well, Yannick, I need help with a project I'm doing. I need help with the music for a game I'm scoring. Would you like to help me out? And Robin, I said, well, yeah, sure. And that was like a big coincidence. And I'm not sure why he chose me, who failed in finishing this arrangement before. But well, he did. And I think that was the Cossacks DLC in 2015, released in 2015. And apparently this went well.
Yeah.
We did some more DLCs and more projects for them in the past of today, and I hope we can continue this collaboration with them because it's very interesting and very exciting projects.
So the fact that you work with Paradox and Nordic, those two don't have anything to do with each other. It's just a coincidence that you ended up in the north with both those paths, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Safe to say that, I think.
It's funny, and that's a cool story because I think it kind of goes to show that it is sort of a happy coincidence, and it's always based on a little bit of getting lucky, like if you want to score bigger projects. But then again, it also shows that you can kind of force those, and you can just say, are you looking for someone to turn this into an orchestra arrangement? Well, yeah, I can do it, whatever. Then it just, and that's how you kind of came down that road. That's really cool. But now that we're already talking about the whole setup, just some information for our listeners. So the Guild 1 is, or the Guild in general, is a very popular game series, especially here in Germany, I think, that sold hundreds of thousands of copies probably since, I think, 2002 is when the first one came out. And the first 2 installments, as you just said, Yannick, were developed by Forehead Studios at the time and then published by Jowood, who are based in Austria, or rather were, because they were acquired by Nordic Games, who are now called THQ Nordic from Sweden. And the Guild 3 is now in their hands, and it's being developed by a new developer, by a different studio called Golem Labs, who are based in Canada. And yeah, whose previous game was also published by THQ Nordic, which is probably why they went with those guys. Did I get that right so far?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so the game's been in development for a while. It's now in early access. When did you guys get on board?
Well, we talked about we know the producer since the Guild 2 Renaissance, and we stayed in contact, and we are like good friends now. And so he contacted us in 2014, end of 2014, I think, in the early stages of the production or in the planning of the Guild 3. And he said, "Do you want to make music? Could you do a pitch? Could you write a demo for us?" And we demoed for them. And then until we actively got to write music for the game, several months went on, and I think we started in 2016.
Okay.
Yes. March 2016.
So it's been 2 years now.
Yeah, exactly.
And I already listened to the soundtrack, so it's finished. How long has it been finished?
Since last year, January last year,
okay.
2017.
So it's
is that right, Yannick?
Yes, that's correct. We finished composing the music in January 2017, I think, and after that, the music had to be implemented into the game, and some minor changes and this and that. You know how this goes.
Sure.
Because the game evolves and develops further. So has the music too.
Yeah, I know that one. It's always like, oh, you have to finish the music by next week. It's super important, and then you do, and then nothing happens for half a year, and then the studio gets back to you and says, "Hey, we made some changes to the game. Could you make some changes to the soundtrack as well?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that. I mean, we got together with our producer and we said, okay, we need X amount of music for this gameplay situation or that gameplay situation. But, as you just said, during the process of development and writing the soundtrack, we changed our initial plan a little bit to better fit to the actual game.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because the game is still in early access. So you were essentially writing music for gameplay that didn't quite exist yet. But then again, the music is more, I don't know, it's more loop-based background music, I suppose, because the game is like a simulation game where you don't have to score for particular cues, cutscenes. Like, you don't have to time it that much. So it wasn't that much of a hurdle to just write music for gameplay that was still subject to change, right?
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
You could say it like that, but I think the music for the Guild 3, it's like a bit of a new thing for the series. It evolves with a player, so it's not static in a sense that you play, because the Guild 3 it's basically kind of a role play game, just for people who don't know what it is. So you have a character, and your character progresses, and goes from being a poor dude during medieval times to being a very rich noble in the end, and the music kind of reflects that.
Oh, sweet.
So it's not, I wouldn't say it's you were right, it's not like music which is like a cutscene, which is very time-based, but it's very gameplay-based still, and progress-based on your character.
So you had to know the different tiers that the player could reach. You had to know how many levels there are, and you would score the music for each of those levels?
Exactly. Yep. The player, the character can grow from like Robin said, from a poor citizen, or not even a citizen, poor craftsman
like
or something, up to a nobleman, and the music reflects that. And also the city evolves, the city in which the character lives, like from a small village up to a big flourishing city, and also this is reflected in the music. But as the game itself, the game concept, the gameplay is quite slow, it's not that the soundtrack has to fit to every gameplay aspect. It's more like an atmospherical approach we did.
Yep.
But at the same time following the core gameplay development and the character and background development in the soundtrack. Combining this was not always easy, but I think we tried to find a good mixture between those two approaches.
And the game is... I saw a gameplay video earlier where somebody started out as like this American Dream mode, only set in Germany in 1400, where you have to rank up, and it starts in 1400. So how many years pass throughout the gameplay session? Do you guys know that? Is it like generations of people? Do you go 100 years, or is it just a couple years?
No, it's just as long as you want. It's like an endless game. You can play up into 2018 if you want, but it will still look like medieval times.
Okay.
So,
and does your character die or something, or do they just grow 600 years old?
No, that's possible. You will die eventually, and one of your main tasks is to grow a family, to marry someone, get children together, build your dynasty, and so secure your dynasty.
Oh yeah, right. I saw that you can already go and search for a wife in the early stages. Yeah, that's fun. Okay. And so you didn't reflect the change of the era much? Like the music isn't tied to the year that's in the game?
No, not at all, because the medieval buildings stay.
Yeah.
Even in 2018, where still everything is still medieval, and the music is also still medieval.
It doesn't turn into Blade Runner style synthesizers in the year 2200. That would be fun.
I would personally say sadly not.
Okay.
And Yannick would probably say, oh yeah. Good.
Okay. Interesting. So to the music itself, did you guys get some live performances for the soundtrack? I saw that the Sofia Session Orchestra was credited in some way, or is it mostly VSTs?
It's actually it's mostly virtual and VSTs, but we recorded some live strings. That's why the Sofia Session Orchestra got a credit, and also some live guitars.
Oh, cool.
Here and there. It's like, when you have to write a lot of music for a game like that, which never ends. It's like a very, very rare thing, even in AAA games, to have, the budget for doing it all live.
Yeah, absolutely. So how
it's
many
also
hours
hard to find all the
did you write? When you say it's a lot of music, how long is the soundtrack?
It's 100 minutes long.
Oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't, which is important to mention, we didn't all do all on our own. We also had a partner, Bastian Kieslinger, who is responsible for the Spellforce 3 soundtrack. Spellforce 3 has just been released a couple of months ago, and he wrote a couple of tracks for the Guild 3 as well, and he also wrote some beautiful guitar pieces that I think recorded live. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're live.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
So it's actually it's 100 minutes of music, but counting in all the variations, I would say it's more. But don't ask us. We never counted the total number of minutes.
It's also different to have a soundtrack release or play it in order as opposed to playing it in the game. You could just, the way you fake the loop and the way you start and end the track kind of all impact how long the total number of music, so to speak, would be. So it's kind of hard to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. And also on the composing side, what are some hallmarks of the music of that era and place in terms of music theory? Are there particular scales or chord progressions? How do you research that? Did you emulate that, or didn't you at all?
We absolutely did, and I think that's one thing that we try to do in most of our soundtracks, to bring some authenticity to the music, because we, as you said, we often write for historical settings, and the historical and authentic approach is very important to us, because I personally think that what could be more immersive and set the mood better than some authentic influences to the music, right? So we didn't only want to write some like Hollywood sounding medieval music, some cheesy things, but also some authentic tunes, like original lute solo, like John Dowland style, like this Renaissance music, or medieval dances. Or what I did was I even did some research in old manuscripts from that time, from the medieval era. And for example, I found a melody from 1348, I think, that was the year of the big plague, the Black Death was in Europe this year. And there's one melody that I'm not sure what is the name in English, the Geisler. That's like religious people who went through the streets and punishing themselves with whips, and that was a melody that
I think I found a word it's flagellant.
Flagellant. Yeah, that's the right word. Yeah, exactly. Flagellant. And they went to through the streets and praying to God, like release us from the plague and be good to us. We do everything, and at the same time, the wives and children were dying at home, from the plague, and they were singing this melody, which I found in the manuscripts, and I thought, wow, in game, when the plague comes to the city, I have to use this melody.
Oh yeah, wow, cool.
And so I did like an arrangement of that original melody, and thought that's very important. And that was also fun to research and to look for this kind of musical influences, authentic influences from music from that era, from that time.
So the music changes when the plague comes. So are there in-game events that trigger certain changes in the music as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Like,
for example, the plague or a fire, stuff like that. Yeah, wedding, war, I think. What else? Probably I can't remember them all, because
there are so many.
Yeah, there are many events. Which
if you give birth to a child, I think there's a short piece that will tune in.
Oh yeah, sweet. Very cool. Yeah, I saw in the. I wondered that when I saw the track list that there's a track called Wedding Dance. That's probably when a wedding takes place.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Cool. And is Punishment from God the plague track?
Yeah, that's the track. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I can play that for our podcast if that's okay with you guys.
If you like it, you can of course play the track. Sure.
So that was Punishment from God, and the melody was taken from a 14th century piece that was actually being sung in the streets when the plague was plaguing people. That's fascinating, cool. And in terms of like arrangement, chord progressions, and instruments and all that stuff, that's mostly authentic, or you try to be as close as possible?
We tried to do some very authentic arrangements as well, but not for the whole soundtrack, because as we said earlier, the music evolves with the character, and while the character evolves, and we thought it would be interesting to see the music evolving from very small ensembles and instrumentation up to a big orchestra, like when the city has become the capital and the flourishing city of trade and politics and whatever, and the music can grow up to a big orchestra, so it's not always medieval only.
Yeah, that's obviously not a track that would have existed back in the day. Something that changes from like small folk track to a big orchestral piece. Oh yeah, obviously.
And for 100 minutes of music, that would be a little annoying, maybe gameplay wise, if you only have these medieval dances playing in your ears, and that would be a little.
By the way, that's also
exhausting.
the reason we didn't use any bagpipes.
Okay.
Just I had to say this once, just because when people listen, oh, where are the bagpipes? No bagpipes in this game. Sorry.
Because they're just too obnoxious. They're too far in the foreground, and they get stuck in your head, or what's the reason?
Yeah, and come on, bagpipes are kind of a cliche.
Sure.
To be honest, and there's so much like other stuff which nobody used before for medieval soundtracks.
What are some of the interesting instruments that you guys incorporated?
Oh my god. Well, of course the lute.
Like flute solo
Yeah,
pieces. I think
solo
that's
pieces
nothing
just for
you
flute.
hear in other soundtracks.
And we also did some, like we experimented with some sound design. Not like, I mean, obviously the game or a soundtrack, the end result is not a sound design based soundtrack. You know, it's
Yeah.
a very classical musical composed soundtrack, but still it features some sound design elements. Like we used instruments and changed them, fucked them up, so to say, and created our own sounds, which still are very organic and very historical, but different some sort. But even in those sound design instruments and sounds, there are no bagpipes used.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I feel like the music is, it tends to get stuck in your head anyway because it's so like the closed and like, I don't know, it's hard to describe especially in English for me, but it has sort of the tendency to be simple and understandable, like the music from the time was, in terms of the melodies that are very much in the foreground. I imagined bagpipes to be especially intrusive.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And they're also a pain to record.
Oh yeah. Are there good bagpipe VSTs anyway?
No.
Okay.
I know someone who played in a medieval band for 10 years, and I couldn't say yes now because he would quit our friendship.
Okay.
So I had to say no.
You have to have the real instrument or just leave it out.
Exactly.
Oh.
It was hard enough to program the VSTs with the other medieval instruments and to get a kind of realistic result out of them.
So
because
you had to edit them
these
as
small
well?
ensembles, they live of live performances, right? So it's very hard to bring that to sample-based production.
So what's your magic? What do you do to make them more alive?
Well, just don't use click. Don't use the click. Just play them in.
Oh, interesting.
And actually perform. I mean, I think Yannick has very strong opinions and feelings about this, so I better let him speak and shut up now.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that involves a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot of fine-tuning the samples and every notes and every MIDI signals, like the for the lute solo piece, right? There's I think you can't only play a glissando and string, and this sounds realistic because if you play it on the keyboard, it will sound fake.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to tweak it and make it a little more edgy, and like you don't get every note perfectly on the guitar. Sometimes you miss a note and you miss a string or something, or you have a background like a squeaky noise when you slide on the strings and such. And if you can implement all this and manage to get all this into the performance, in the MIDI performance, the sample-based performance, then you get a decently realistic sound. And as Robin said, no click. And I think the arrangement itself gives a lot, is very crucial in terms of realistic sound or not so realistic sound. So if you have a good arrangement and a good instrumentation for the authentic historical tracks, it will add up a little to a good sound. I think that's also the same with when you write for a big orchestra. If you do a crappy orchestration and your piece can be programmed as good as you can, but it will still sound crappy.
Yeah.
Because it has to be an organic sound, an organic arrangement
Mm-hmm.
in order to get an organic sound from the samples as well.
Fascinating. Yeah, I imagine it's like 1,000 small steps, apart from the arrangement, of course, which is a very, very big aspect, but you have to fine tune like parameters of every note and add in little mistakes and stuff to make the overall feeling like to make it all come together to a more dynamic and realistic sounding piece.
Yes, and that's also what I think is a problem with many sample libraries,
Yeah.
in fact, because they are too clean very often.
You guys would get along great with Christian Hansen.
Yeah, I bet we would.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a Spitfire co-founder, and their libraries kind of specialize in little imperfections and making every note sound different. When I talked to him, I asked, I should say, for making the imperfections customizable by key switches. So you could play every note on the keyboard with a different imperfection depending on the key switch. That would be like, I think if somebody does that someday, they get really rich.
Yeah, it's hard to create such libraries, right? Because sometimes you want these imperfections, sometimes you absolutely want to avoid imperfections, depending on what you like to compose and what production you're working on. So it's very hard to get both of it in one library, and that's where live performances and live recordings would be great to have.
But I think at the same time, the risk of doing such a library, you would probably get bankrupt pretty soon, pretty easily, because the production costs would be enormous.
Sure, you have to record like 10 times the material.
And still, I don't think. I think it's this strange topic of getting something which is perfect, even with the imperfections. It doesn't exist. I personally enjoy having an instrument, a virtual instrument, which can do like one job, but it can do it better than anything else. So I know where I can use it, how I can use it, what it is, and and don't have an instrument which tries to be everything, but is nothing in the end.
Yeah,
I think there's a difference. There's a difference between that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it might be required to combine instruments, which you probably did too. Like you want, for example, a very clean string ensemble for the 1-bit, and you want something more organic and more imperfect and in a more private piece.
Yeah, exactly. That's
but
different requirements to different pieces, right?
Yeah.
Also in this soundtrack.
Even the instruments themselves had different ring and different sound to them. Like strings in the 15th century were like if you had the actual instruments from back then, they would sound like the strings would be less brilliant than what you hear nowadays. But you probably didn't go as far as to also change the sound or find VSTs that sounded like the instruments did back then, did you?
I think it depends on your choice of VSTs in the end. There are VSTs which are very close to the sound of the instruments back then. But at the same time, you don't, we still write music for the listener of today, of today's time. And there are certain things, certain rules, structure-wise, and you mentioned earlier it's very melodic, the soundtrack, like melody-wise, which those rules didn't exist during medieval times, but we still blended them into the authentic historical approach, because we both know that we don't want we don't want bagpipes. We don't want 2 hours of bagpipes music. But I think
we can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, it's not just bagpipes. It's when you have 2 hours of krumm horns.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's also annoying.
Yeah, sure.
So you always have to find like a middle ground, something which works and combine both worlds.
I see. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the game, the soundtrack for the game? Otherwise, we could move on to the more recent projects you guys have been doing.
Yannick, is there anything else? Anything interesting?
Yeah, fun anecdote or something.
Oh no. Yeah.
No fun.
The thing is, yeah, there was no fun involved at all. When Yannick and I work together, there's no fun.
Okay.
No, not really.
Not really. Yeah.
I mean, I only think of the main theme composing process, right? Right? Is that right, Robin?
That was no fun?
No, that was no fun. I wrote a melody and fleshed it out a little bit, and I sent it to him, and Yannick's response was, "This is complete crap." This is like nothing memorable, and I get your stuff together, man.
It's a fucking main theme, man.
And after that, I was so angry at him because I sent him that track and melody like the day before, and he didn't write anything back. He waited until the next day, until the day after the next day, 1 a.m. It was 1 a.m. And then he finally replied and just said, "It's crap."
He found the words to express how much he disliked the track.
Yeah, and Robin had been working on this thing for like a week or so. I don't know. Quite a long time.
Quite a long time, yeah.
Okay, that's harsh.
and I came and that's nothing. Yeah, that's crap.
So did you end up keeping anything from it?
No.
No.
Because that's the good thing about our collaboration. I mean, before we send a track to a producer or a game developer, it also has to pass like the quality test of the other guy. So when I write a track and I send it to Yannick, if he says no, it's not good enough, we won't even dare to send it to the developer. Right? It's the same thing also for music he writes. So with the main theme, I got so angry after that I just sit down and I just in total rage, I wrote a new melody within 10 minutes, and sent it to him, and he said, "That's good."
No way. Yeah, sometimes it's like that, Sometimes you keep polishing something that isn't quite there, and starting from scratch immediately is a better result. I mean, better is always subjective, but sometimes it's just like that. Okay, that's actually good that you bring that up, because that's a question I kind of overlooked on my little questionnaire here, which is how much of the music from the old soundtracks did you guys incorporate? So if you wrote a main theme, I guess you didn't take a main theme from a previous installment. Is there anything you took from the previous games?
Well, that's we tried to do a new approach, because the Guild 1, the first installment, was very melodic but not that really medieval sounding, and the Guild 2 was very romantic, orchestral sounding, and as with the music, there are two groups in the community in terms of the games itself. One half of the community prefers the first title, the Guild 1. The other half prefers the Guild 2. So it was hard for us to get on with one particular approach. Like we do it like in the Guild 2 or like in the Guild 3, Guild 1. So for the Guild 3, we decided it would be the best thing to do would be to get a complete new approach that doesn't orientate too much on the previous titles. So we tried to get some elements from the previous soundtracks that were really great, that we think worked really fine in terms of music or in terms of gameplay, but to incorporate our own sound and to say and to communicate to the fans, like, see, the Guild 3 is nothing like a warmed up compilation of old elements of the Guild series, but rather a complete new game and a new approach, and also in terms of music. Like, we didn't only warm up old musical ideas.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, it should. I think our aim was that when you play the game, you should feel at home. But at the same time, it doesn't sound like your original home you were supposed to hear. So yeah, I think that was our goal. It's, I say it was our goal because it's kind of, it's always difficult to, in perspective, to look at what you've done. I don't know whether we succeeded. I don't know.
Well,
maybe we have, maybe not.
I think we would have done a lot of things different nowadays.
Yes.
If we look at it retrospectively now, I think we would do some things different now. But
sure.
I hope that the soundtrack will please the Guild community, and I hope it will work well gameplay-wise, and and is able to bring some immersion and mood and atmosphere to the game.
I'm sure it does. Yeah. I'll just go ahead and say I think it works quite well with the game. I haven't played the game itself. I just watched some videos, but so far I had a really good impression of the music and the soundtrack, like solo as well. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what are you guys doing next? Well, what are you up to now? Since the Guild soundtrack has been finished for over a year, I'm sure you've already embarked on some new adventures in the meantime.
Yeah, we're working right now actually on 2 games. One game is already publicly announced, which is Foundation. It's a game developed by Polymorph Games, Canadian game dev, and yeah, it's a great city building game, again set during medieval times. Surprise, surprise. I can promise you that we also won't use any bagpipes there.
Very good. So that's your guarantee. That should be like your claim on your website. So if you hire us, there will be no bagpipes.
100% bagpipe free. No, and there's also another game we are sadly not allowed to talk about yet.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a pretty exciting project. And to continue with the bagpipe thing, we had another project which came out 3 weeks ago. And it was a DLC, an immersion pack for Europa Universalis.
An immersion pack?
Yeah, called Rule Britannia. And we used bagpipes.
Oh!
Yes.
What happened there?
Every track has bagpipes in it.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I mean, it lends itself to that, right? Rule Britannia sounds like that needs backpacks. Backpacks,
yeah,
let's say.
That
bagpipes.
was like a war-themed music. Like it was like more militaristic sounding music was required, and also influenced by the Scottish or Irish ancient music style. So that requires bagpipes, right? You can't get around them.
Mm-hmm.
With
Okay.
this
Yeah.
with this briefing.
Yeah, I think that would
yeah,
have been a complaint actually if you hadn't used them there.
It's not the Highland bagpipes, like the traditional Highland bagpipes, because that would be a little difficult to get into a game and
Mm-hmm.
not getting tired too quickly in game, because Europa Universalis is also a very slow
Yeah.
game
Yeah.
and doesn't evolve too quickly, so you will be hearing the music over and over again. And so we used some like older bagpipes and smaller bagpipes, and not the traditional Highland bagpipes, which are very prominent
Yeah.
sounding.
Yeah, I think you can turn them down in the mix as much as you want. They're just so sharp. They'll stick out everything. Yeah, sure. Interesting. So where did you get those? You had to use VSTs then, right?
Well, with back, we had to face our inner demons and use bagpipes, yes.
Yeah.
But we went a bit of a different way. Because, as Yannick just pointed out, we didn't use any Highland bagpipes.
Yeah.
We also didn't use Ilm bagpipes, like in Braveheart. We kind of did our own thing again, and like we mixed several bagpipes together, like virtually several bagpipes VSTs together to have like a more flexible bagpipe sound and like kind of our own bagpipe sound.
I see.
So yeah, that was kind of our approach to it.
Like, don't get too overwhelmed with overtones and high frequencies and stuff, but get a warm sound and such, and that's why we use different bagpipes and combined them to a new sound.
You were like, if we have to use bagpipes, we're gonna do our own thing here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, if you have to use VSTs, and it's the sample only production. For example, you have to use VSTs, but this also gives you opportunities you don't have when you just use a live orchestra, for example. I mean, just the bagpipe example, layering different bagpipes, creating your own sound. We also did that in other projects with other instruments. Because when you have to rely on VSTs, you should like get creative with what you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Try to do something different.
Yep.
Also, in terms of creating your own voice, in terms of music, because everyone uses the same samples in the industry.
Yeah.
And you don't want to sound like everyone else, and so we try to do like this musical sound design sometimes, or create our own versions of the instruments, which still sound like the original instruments, but not quite, and which makes our sound a little bit more different to other soundtracks, to make it less interchangeable.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. That's important, because everybody sounds the same with the same libraries, just round robins of some generic string libraries. That's what you get everywhere, every corner. So it's important to create your own sound to stand out. I think you guys I really hope you guys meet Christian Hansen at some point.
Well, I met him once already at a Musikmesse 3 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Because we should be honest about that. We're also like a little bit affiliated to another sampling developer.
Okay.
So I'm part of Threats of Sampling.
Yeah, I saw.
And we use like many libraries from Threats of Sampling in our work. And Yannick is also a huge help when developing the libraries. He's a beta tester and gives like shitload of feedback for us. And
I make them angry.
Yeah, he makes us. When
my task.
It's a special move.
every time
2 days later.
he couldn't make me
That's
angry
fine.
by writing music. He starts raging about sample libraries.
Okay.
So we're fighting all the time.
Okay, sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's. I think that's also really valuable to be in that process. I always think I should be more on the creating library side to really get behind the process. I made some contact instruments, but I think that's not the same as working with recorded samples and turning them into an actual library.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, to be honest, and I couldn't do it like all day, all day long.
No.
I'm very, very happy that it's just like a small part of what I'm doing, and the major part of my daily life is like writing music with Yannick together.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. We have the DSC is already out, but we have Foundation to look forward to by Polymorph Games. Kickstarter funded game, which is coming out. When is there a release already? Release date?
There's no like release date set in stone yet. The early access, I think it was on the Kickstarter page, will be released like by the end of 2018.
Yeah, I
beginning
saw
of 2019,
October.
like somewhere around that.
Cool.
So,
yeah, looks really, really promising. Yeah, then thanks a lot for taking the time, guys. It was really, really cool to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you, Julian.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure
for having us.
Yeah, likewise. And I hope the audience found it interesting as well. So if you guys are looking for composers who will not use bagpipes in your historic games, then look no further. That's it for today. That was a pretty long podcast for our standards. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If so, make sure to subscribe to us on SoundCloud, on YouTube, and I hope you come back for next time. I don't know when that's gonna be. The monthly schedule isn't quite working out, but we will be back. We already have 1 or 2 more interviews scheduled, so make sure to check back soon, and I'll see you then.